You are listening to the Horse Radio Network, part of the Equine Network family.
You're listening to the Show Jumping Podcast, a fun and informative show for riders, owners, trainers, grooms, and fans of all levels.
I'm Christy McCormick in Saratoga Springs, New York.
And I'm Kimmy Carlson in St. Louis, Missouri.
And you're listening to the Show Jumping Podcast, where we deliver at-home riding exercises to our listeners and chat with fellow horse enthusiasts about the world of show jumping. Coming up on today's show, Kimmy and I talk back to school. What's it like riding in college on an NCAA program from the athlete's perspective, and how to choose the right school for you. Before our guest, Kimmy, a quick word from our title sponsor.
Relyne GI is a natural, long-term alternative that goes beyond masking symptoms. This unique blend of gut-friendly hyaluronan and wellness-boosting beta-glucan works with your horse's body to soothe and protect their digestive system. Unlike traditional therapies that can disrupt digestion and nutrient absorption, Relyne GI leaves your horse's natural balance intact. But don't take our word for it. Relyne GI is field tested by leading veterinarians and backed by peer-reviewed research, including a study by Dr. Nathan Slovis, showing it effectively reduces gastric ulcers in active horses. Plus, it's Clean Sport certified and safe for competition use. Head over to resolvet.com. That's RESOLVET.com and use code SJP at checkout for 10% off, linked in our show notes.
All right. So, Kimmy, can you tell our listeners, as my guest today, how you ended up at University of South Carolina as a rider, which was part of the NCAA team, correct? Yes. Or that's the wrong way to say that, NCAA program.
Yeah, it was an NCAA sport, Division I sport at University of South Carolina. Yeah, and so I ended up there. So a little context, this was a while ago. So I was at University of South Carolina.
That was just yesterday, I feel like.
No, it was 2009.
Okay.
It was my freshman year, and I graduated in 2013. So I'm sure a lot has changed, but I think a lot has also stayed the same since I showed up there. So my recruiting process was probably a little different than most today for a couple of reasons. One, I was coming in, with, national titles and, things like that, where I was being sort of actively recruited by some schools. I think I'd also given the impression to many schools that I didn't want to go to college. So there was this interesting sort of mismatch of colleges who thought I just didn't want anything to do with them, and then some that had decided to try to recruit me. But either way, I got recruited and I went and visited 3 schools. So it was University of South Carolina, I went and visited University of Georgia, and I went and visited Auburn, kind of in one swoop. And my visit at the University of South Carolina was the most formal. I kind of went down and did the tour, whereas when I went and visited Georgia, I met up with a friend who was already on the team and just got kind of showed around, met with the coach fairly briefly, and it was a little more relaxed than the sort of official recruiting visit at South Carolina. So I don't know that I'd recommend my recruiting process. It was a little haphazard. I didn't plan it out very well. I certainly didn't plan it out far enough in advance, but I got pretty lucky.
Let's back up a little bit. I think when you were starting, the program was still pretty new.
Correct.
Right. And it's a little more mainstream now. When you say some colleges thought you didn't want to go to school, was that true? I don't actually remember us talking about you not going to college. Or did you not think you wanted to go to school and ride?
I think it was a little bit of both. I think I was very indecisive, and there were times where I didn't think I was going to go to school at all. I did take a gap year, as is still, I think, very common, to finish the finals in the fall of what would have been my freshman year. So I did after high school, and then I was very torn between really going to school and not having anything to do with horses for a little while. And from that, everything to, going to Europe to ride and, sort of go that route.
Mm-hmm.
That was pretty briefly. So it's kind of all over the board. And I think there were a lot of mixed messages. And at the time, yeah, like you said, the sport was new enough. I'm going to get the exact year wrong of when NCAA equestrian became an official Division I sport. I want to say is like 2003, 2004. So we're kind of only 5 or so years in, kind of one generation into having equestrian as a Division I, as a Title IX sport. And it was still sort of finding its feet. And I think because it was so new, it hadn't trickled back into the broader worlds really at all yet. So I think in terms of those juniors who were likely going to become professionals, college was just starting to become this kind of more obvious pathway to get there. Oh yeah, go to college, go ride at college and then come back was, even when I was looking, really not part of the conversation. And then by the time I left or graduated in 2013, I think very much was, which is awesome. I love that's such a much more obvious pathway for juniors who are doing, sort of high performing juniors to say, oh yeah, I'm going to go to school. I'm going to do this. And there are even more schools available than there were when I did it. And so I really love that has become more of a road, but it wasn't as much back in 2008, 2009.
Yes. So Google says 2002 was the first year of when that started. And 2002 was my last junior year. So that was not an option for me, even though it says it, again, it started then. That was not like you say, an obvious option. It was either, if you want to keep riding, become a professional, and school then is a question mark. How do you, which I did, but how do you do school and ride or teach or try to work for anybody as a pro? Or, my options were either A, do that, B, do not ride and go to school, or C, halfway do both, fit in your degree on the side, which is something I would never advise any kids to do these days, whether they want to ride in school or not. I learned that this sport, if you want to be a part of it, is always here. I felt like I was in such a rush to become a professional. I definitely wanted to. I knew that. But I also knew that I probably shouldn't let school just be a side note that I thought about and didn't get to. So I think that conversation was opened up when when riding as for not just an intercollegiate team, but for an NCAA team, it became sort of middle ground where you could get your education and keep riding. And who knows what would happen after school from that, but you weren't doing, going all or nothing. So I love that by the time you were around into school, that it was a path.
Yeah. And I mean, it honestly, saying it changed my life is not an understatement, or certainly set me on a very, very different course than I likely would have, given had that not been available, had it been just, that choice between you do horses or you do school, and you can't really do both. My life could have looked very different than it does versus had I getting recruited to South Carolina. And I think, my recruiting process was haphazard, to say the least. But I think generally now, especially 15 years later, it's
more of a system now.
It's much more of a system. And I think it's much more, again, that the knowledge that this is a really good pathway to both go to college and ride is sort of percolated back down even into, when kids start riding, they sort of are aware that this is a possibility no matter what level you're at. And so for general recruiting, I think, it's probably the same for any college, is really thinking about it quite early. I know there are some rules around, I believe it's after August 1st before your junior year, after your junior year, that you can actually start talking to the coaches at the schools. So there's some rules around when you can and cannot begin sort of more formal communication. But even before that, you can look at schools, you can talk to the students, there are some third party, often people who were coaches at schools and were involved in the system and are now sort of help kids through the recruiting process as kind of a third party. Those now exist and are great. So I think there's a lot of pathways now to real early on get a better feel for what schools are out there, how you need to apply, where you might fit in, both by just going directly to the schools and the programs themselves or through kind of third party sort of recruiters, I guess. So I think there's a much more formalized process, and it's probably best to start probably a year and a half before I did, if you're thinking about applying to these schools.
So let's say you're a rider now and you're in your junior year, going into your junior year of high school currently, as this time of year would be. What advice would you give those students who are thinking about riding in college, want to do more than an intercollegiate program, which those differences, I had a podcast earlier this year with Skidmore trainers, and that's the college in my town here in Saratoga. And they talked a lot about the intercollegiate program, and that is such a broader space where riders of any level can enter. They have beginner riders, they have flat riders, they have, cross rail riders, and they have competitions, and that goes all the way up to 3 feet. But can you talk about how, if you're a little more I've been showing at our, doesn't have to be Florida, doesn't have to be on the A circuit, but I've been going to horse shows. I've been competing in some equitation classes. I want to keep going. What advice would you give to a prospective riding student now? What should they try to work on or even communicate that they can do with prospective schools?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. First, I'll say that even, on my time in South Carolina, we had a really broad range of experience, right? We had sort of a small handful, really only a couple of juniors who had, won ribbons at, the finals, the Mental clay finals. And then we had a lot of the team that had, grown up doing regional shows and, 3 foot, 3.6, more local finals, New England finals, sort of equivalent. And that was all really valuable to have. And some of those, and one of the great things about the format of the NCAA is it is a little bit of an equalizer, and you do end up getting some really strong riders kind of out of more of that more regional local background who come in and they just happen to be really, really good and intuitive at the flat portion or at riding all these different horses if they've kind of been a working student or rode some horses. And so it is a little bit of an equalizer, and I think it allows kids who maybe aren't coming from, your big equitation barns to come in and still be not only just a part of the team, but a really valuable part of the team in the competition sense. Mm-hmm. And so I think if you're getting ready, but if you are coming from that, I know with the recruiting process, a lot of times videos are involved. So the format, and I know there are competitions now that even sort of help mimic the format of the college riding. So practicing on some of those, just getting kind of that idea of you get 4 minutes to warm up, you get 4 jumps, that's a very, very different format. And so becoming familiarized with that and practicing that can help a lot, getting videos of how you perform sort of in that situation, and then just talking to people early and getting feedback on where you are and getting kind of involved probably a little earlier in the recruiting schedule than maybe you would otherwise.
Can you explain what that format is? And that you're talking about when you're at a competition, right? When you guys go to a show, and what is that like? What is it? Explain from start to finish how that works.
Yeah, I was blindsided by it because I came in as when my freshman year and they're like, this is how we do it. So I love it. I think it's a great format for the system. I think it does help equalize. So there are 4 divisions, 2 English and 2 Western. We'll focus on the English divisions here. So there's a jumping portion, which is essentially an equitation round, kind of somewhere between 3 foot and 3.6, depending on which competition you're at, what the horses are capable of. Equitation round. And then there is a flat, equitation on the flat, which is really a dressage test. Usually quite simple dressage test. And so for each of these competitions, each team will have 5 riders for each of the 4 competitions, but in this case, the 2 English ones. And some of those riders can be the same. So some can do both flat and jumping. They don't have to be unique. So each division will have 5 riders from each team. And then 5 horses will be assigned from usually the hosting school will have the horses. This changes when we go to nationals or SEC championships where all the schools will actually bring horses and they'll mix them up and kind of rank them. And there's a whole sort of different system for getting, if 2 teams are competing against each other, they're not on either of their own horses, which when they go to nationals. But for kind of the everyday shows, you're on the host team's horses. There are 5 horses. They quite literally draw names out of a hat to determine which 2 riders, one from each school, will be riding which horse and in which order in the competition. And so then you have 10 rounds, right? 5 on each side, 1 rider from each team on the same horse, and whoever gets the higher score. So it's all judged, it's all scored. Whoever gets the higher score from the judges on that particular horse wins 1 point. And so there are 20 points total available in the entire competition. And then you can either win, lose, or you can tie. And then no team gets a point for that round. If, say, you both got a score of, 79 on a specific horse. And so really I think it's great because you might get a really difficult horse or a really, short-strided horse or whatever, a spooky, young, what have you. And you kind of you get 4 minutes to warm up. And if you're jumping, you get 4 jumps. And so in that really short amount of time, you have to kind of figure out, okay, does this horse have gas, brakes? Does it turn? Mm-hmm. Does it have a lead change? If it does, mm-hmm. When's it right? Very, very quickly. So
are you allowed to do simple changes if the horse doesn't have a great change?
Yeah, generally the horse is used for jumping. Even in my day did. There was I think one horse we had who was just very, very good at landing on the lead. And so you'll get things like that. But at other schools, there were some that didn't. So you did really try to land on the lead, or sometimes I don't remember doing a lot of simple changes. So I think most of the horses that were put in, I don't know if it was a requirement or not, but they weren't always good lead changes, but had lead changes. And so there might. And yeah, so very quickly, and you kind of get in a routine of this is sort of what I do to see if it has a mouth, if it, does it go when I put my leg on, right? And then, or the other side of that is you might get a just rock star, right? There were a couple horses that, were just fabulous, had gone to the finals and were just really, really great horses.
And most of these horses are all donated horses, right?
Correct. Yeah. So these are all donated to the schools, and they're donated for all sorts of reasons.
I did another what donation looks, well, I guess with that Skidmore, with those horses, I've donated horses to Skidmore because it can be a great, second career if they're not quite up to hanging on to that life of show jumping anymore. So
yeah,
you might get, there's some fantastic horses that they have.
Some really fantastic horses. And so then you start asking yourself, okay, how do I show off on this really nice horse? And that's a very different ride than to decide in 4 minutes to say, am I managing, a horse and sort of helping it, holding its hand and getting it around this course? Or am I trying to get a 90, right? Am I trying to show off and be really
Get
slick.
a point for my team.
Especially if, you go and you're up and you happen to draw against somebody who's also has that experience and is really capable of getting a really high score. And you're like, okay, now I've kind of got to bring it. It's not just about managing. That's not gonna win me the point, probably. So that's a really fun aspect too, and very, very different than anything I came across before college, right? The format's totally different, and the way you win points, and again, what your, that sort of arbitrary score is irrelevant. It's really just, did you score higher on that horse?
Beat the one other team. Yes.
Yeah, I've been absolutely thrilled to get a 75 or a 70, in this format. If it's like a really green horse and that, wins you the point, fabulous. So
you may have gone over this. You're just trying to beat the rider who was on the same horse that you are riding, correct?
Yeah.
And then so those 5 riders are each, obviously paired with another rider from the other school per horse. Okay. So the most jumping points that a team could get is 5, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
all right.
5-0 would be the score after if one team all won all of the rounds in the only place, and in my memory, where those raw scores come in is if you do end up tying, right? If you do end up 10-10 at the end of the whole thing, they will add up the raw scores.
Okay.
And then whoever wins. That's pretty rare, but it does happen.
Okay.
That's something to keep in mind.
It's still a benefit to get a higher score. However, you really are just focusing on trying to get that 1 point.
Yeah, precisely.
Talk about the flat portion. How does that work?
The flat portion is
let's remind our listeners, flat work. I think though you peaked as a flat rider, and I understand. Okay, Kimmy has won the McClay finals, so clearly her flat work was pretty good, maybe better than my memory serves. However, my best memory of you in the flat was when you were 13 at Capital Challenge. Yes, and they had that open division day 1. Which now it seems like there's 18 of those classes. But at the time, there was 1 jumping and 1 flat. And Tommy was very young. Again, our equitation horse that we reference all the time, Sundance. And you were flatting. And I remember specifically watching you from the stands. And a trainer who I wish I remember who this person was, but said to me, my God, that girl's heels are so far down. And they were yours. And then you won the flat class. And I was so proud of that. However, I think that was the last time your heels were that far down. I don't believe flat work was really the thing you loved doing. So, and if I'm really being honest, I don't love that portion of it either. However, it is so important. And I had this so amazing conversation with that dressage trainer just a few weeks ago. And so the importance of it is huge. The enjoyment of it tends to be low for us, equitation show jumping riders. What do you wish you had worked on prior to entering your college career?
Yeah, no, more flat work's always better. There's a lot you do. We do a lot of flat work without stirrups. And I think, so you end up dropping and picking up your stirrups a lot. And so that's a skill. Okay.
That's a skill. You have to practice that.
This is a little embarrassing, but I don't care anymore. I still cannot, and it's not going to happen now. I can't feel my diagonal when I pick it up.
Was that true your whole life?
Totally true.
I didn't know that.
100% true. I like.
How did you get away with that? You were in the McClay finals. How did you do that?
Well, I can pick it up from a canter, that I can do, but from a walk or a sitting trot.
Okay.
So from a sitting trot, I learned I'm very sneaky. I can look down, specifically their inside shoulder, and I can sort of then clock where I am and then pick it up correctly if we're at the sitting trot first. So I have to
For our listeners, this is not the correct way to figure out
this
what
is not
diagonal
advice.
you should be
This is an
picking up.
admission.
You should learn to feel when the outside shoulder is going forward to stand up with that. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
No, never did that.
This is
so
new
I have
information.
To look down at the inside shoulder very quickly. And then if we're walking, If I'm picking up a posting trot from the walk, it's just a dice roll, and I just would fix it very, very quickly. I can't believe you didn't know this.
I didn't know any of this. My
So
goodness, that's embarrassing for me as your trainer that I should have known that about you. Okay. Great job figuring that out.
So dealing with that, so there's a lot of both picking up and dropping your stirrups while you're doing a movement. So we tended to do a lot without stirrups. We kind of take them off for a whole lesson, as opposed to that having to like drop them, pick them up, drop as you're sort of task loading and doing these other things. So that's something I would absolutely recommend practicing. And another, for me, it was figuring out all the ways to get on the right diagonal where I needed to be as we're changing directions and doing a ton of transitions from the canter to the trot to the walk to the sitting trot. So I did manage it, but it was always a little bit of a management issue.
Did your coach know that at the time either?
Oh, I know. I'm sure I didn't tell her. I didn't tell you.
You didn't tell me. No. So really, it would have been helpful for her to know, and to say. So when I train short stirrup children, we place people at the side of each ring and have a little system. Like if you're on the wrong diagonal, and you're on the wrong diagonal. If you look up and you see my hand on my head, then you need to change your diagonal. So you really could have used that system.
I mean, by the time I got to college, I was very good on my own of like,
okay. You figured out your own system of your diagonal.
And to say I couldn't, okay. I feel like I need to clarify here. Mm-hmm. I couldn't feel my diagonal quickly.
Okay.
So like I would feel like if I after 3 posts, I'd be like, this is wrong. But that's too long.
Yes, it is.
In most competitions. So it's not that I'd just be trotting around the ring on the wrong bed. Although I'm sure that happened. But it was really on that when you pick it up from the different gates, I was never able to do it by feel. I always had to.
Okay. Well, that is a skill that someone needs to practice before entering any equitation class, in my opinion, but just something to know. Okay, great. What about the dressage tests themselves?
So the dressage tests themselves, there's a couple things that happened. One is remembering them is hard. So
that's so different than learning a course. And when those patterns, side diagonal, roll back, end jump, broken line, you're good.
Yeah. And that's really something that once you're in that little box, it's 40 meters by 20 meters. There are no cues to help you, right? If you kind of be like, you have that moment of, oh, where am I going? There's no number, there's no jumps, there's no other, oh yes, it's this, if you forget your course, a lot of times
obvious line coming up. Yeah.
Yeah, there's nothing. It's a blank page. And so if you don't have a kind of system for remembering where you're going and what comes after what. There are 9 movements in total. I think 2 times my freshman year, I forgot the pattern in the middle of it. Like you just sort of, you're doing it and your mind goes blank and you get totally blank, sort of start sweating, the sort of hot flush of I have no idea what I'm supposed to be doing next. And so that sort of mental aspect for me, I think I was so used to memorizing courses and sort of had how that went in my brain and how I kind of filed that away, that memorizing the dressage patterns, and you don't have very long. You get them shortly before the event. So you don't have a long time.
Oh, so you're not giving them it's not like homework the day before. It's sort of like a course. It's on the board, but you have to know.
Different now, but to the best of my memory, it was always a day of kind of thing. And then when you're at nationals, sometimes you have half a day. Sometimes you are competing in the morning and the afternoon, and you're doing 2 different things. So often it's not a long time, and they're not hard patterns, but really figuring out a way that works for you to memorize them and then do them from just, strictly from memory. That actually was one of the harder parts. And then the other one I remember being really difficult to learn is the 10 and 20 meter circles. To really get, again, it's not something we do. We don't do sized circles in show jumping or our flat work. Generally, we're doing, we'll do small circles, little, but you have to do a circle that's this size particularly. And so 10 meters is half the width of the dressage arena. 20 meters is kind of the whole half. And those are, I think there were,
So slow down, back that up again. Say that in real life. Like, what does that feel like? 10 meters versus 20 meters.
So a 10-meter circle, so it's the diameter of the circle. And so if you think of the dressage arena is 40 meters long and 20 meters wide.
And that's standard. That's every dressage arena, correct?
At least everyone we competed in. I believe
okay.
That's standard. I don't know. I'm not a dressage rider, but at least for NCAA.
Clearly, you are not a dressage rider.
Clearly. Yeah, that did not need to be said. But for NCAA, this is the standard ring. So every dressage ring you go in will be this size. And so a 20-meter diameter circle will take up sort of perfectly 1/2 of the ring. You don't always do it on one side. You sometimes do it in the middle. And then there are letters sort of marking those 3/4 boundaries. And then a 10-meter circle will take up sort of 1/2 of the width of the ring and 1/4 of the ring. And again, you'll often do it, in the middle lengthwise and then go to the center line and back. A 10-meter circle is small. It's okay at the trot. We did a few at the canter. I think at the higher at national, they are hard to do.
So at the canter is really, I mean, you're turning every stride.
Oh, yeah, it's a tight circle. And I think, again, having really practicing, just measuring those out. And for me, it was coming in with really no intuition for what those sizes felt like and what they should feel like at the different gates on different horses was a pretty big learning curve. So I think if you have time beforehand, really practicing and measuring those out, even just on their own, and say, okay, this is what a 10-meter circle feels like. And here's where it kind of goes wrong, right? If it gets too bowed out at the end or cuts in at the beginning. And
when they judge that, would they judge it like a dressage round and score it that way? Or would you get a score like you would, like our flatting scores? Well, we don't really get flatting scores. How do they judge that? Like, do they take off points when you went outside the circle or back in? And again, you're trying to beat one person, right?
Trying to beat one person. And yeah, precisely. So it's judged like a dressage round. So there are 9 movements total that you complete. Each movement gets a score from 1 to 10.
Okay.
Just no decimals, just integer score 1 to 10. And then you get an overall score for your sort of effectiveness, style, etc., as your last 10-point score.
So that's all. Then obviously that's 100, and then that's your IC. Okay.
So if you blow up one movement, you can't go off course. You can't not do a movement. But if you really just mess up one and you get a 1 or a 0, on it, then. But you do everything else really well, you can still get a pretty good score. So in some ways, it can be a little more forgiving in that ways. If you can really, it's like if you miss a jump in a course, that's your whole course.
You're over. Exactly. Right. Yeah. Whereas if wouldn't that be great if that's how rounds were scored?
Right. Jump by jump.
Jump by jump. That would have changed so much. Gosh, how many times have we been in the ring like, oh, it was great until I chipped the last jump, or I had the last jump down, or not even the last, any of the jumps. Yeah. Everything was awesome except for that one.
Yeah. So I think, and it does make it a little more interesting, is you're kind of fighting for each points on each movement in isolation a little bit.
Yep.
So you can be like, oh yeah, that did not go well, but I could still get a pretty good score, right? If I get the rest of these right. And so that was, I think, the scoring is, it's just a very different format. But for me, remembering, getting a mental process for memorizing those dressage tests and getting some good intuition built up for what some of these, especially the circles, feel like. Those really specifically sized movements, kind of supposed to look and feel like on a small horse and on a big horse, would have really helped, I think, my freshman year.
That is probably something that at the time it was still so new. Again, I'm kind of learning about this from you right now, even though I heard so much about it when you were there. I think now I would guess that that's easy to look up and to see how those formats run. But this is, so if you were talking to somebody who was trying to get into a school, would you give them advice to, take a video of performing a dressage test or?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a lot. I think a lot of the recruitment comes off videos because kids are coming from all over the country. And again,
Yep.
shows are so spread out these days, and the coaches are going to some of the really big shows, but they're not necessarily going to those regional finals or more regional shows that still a lot of athletes are coming from. And so then the onus does shift a little more to those athletes to get videos in front of coaches, especially if it's a school that's across the country. If you're showing up in Oregon and Washington and you want to go to Auburn, right? That's probably that's what that's going to look like versus them seeing you in person at a show in Florida, right?
Do you know a lot about the differences, and you must have seen some when you were going to these different schools for competition, the differences in the riding programs? Let's say you either are recruited or you're even looking at 4 or 5 different choices. Obviously, geography comes into play as far as location and weather you might like, but what are some of the differences in those programs that kids might be interested in?
I can speak to what they were in 2009 a little as I remember them. Again, I only really visited 3 schools, and I don't even think I officially visited Auburn. I think we kind of drove through, and or
even the schools because you traveled to their competitions, right?
Yeah, we did. And we had friends on the other teams. And I will say each team will have, like any team, like any group of people, right? Each team very much has a personality.
Okay.
Now that does change through time. So my recollection of sort of the personality of the South Carolina team and the Georgia team and the SMU team is probably completely invalid today. But as you go, sort of understanding that each team does sort of have their own pros and cons and their own sort of both group of the girls that are there and sort of group personality, and
kind of like I would imagine how a barn feels,
Yeah,
and
I think exactly like that.
Yeah.
And I think it's usually pretty, if you go on recruiting trips, which I recommend as much as you can, whether they're official or unofficial, whether you kind of officially go through the process, or if you know someone on the team.
And back up. So recruiting process, let's say you're not being recruited. Let's say you don't have a school coming to you saying, come and look at our team. Let's say you're interested, but you haven't had that reach out. So it's a little more individually driven. Can you, and again, I'm sure you can look these things up, but can you, take trips to go and hang out, make some time to hang out with the barn a little bit? Can you kind of get a feel of what that's like while you're there?
I think again, if you've had that communication with the coach and you've shown, hey, I really want to come to this school, I think you can either, get on those, again, more official trips, or they will make time.
Okay.
If you say, hey, I have time this weekend, I'm doing a college tour, these 2 weeks, can we fit something in?
Like any normal college tour would.
Yeah. And I think, again, if the big if here is if you've had that sort of lead up communication, and they know who you are through that, you should be. And if you can't, I think that's a little bit of a red flag. If they're just, if you're getting sort of stonewalled and you're not getting any feedback from that program, it's like, well, okay. The other option would be, this was 15 years ago, we would still have teammates who could walk on that year. So who came to the school not to ride or not through that recruitment process at all, but did ride, right? It was just they were at the school and they were able to sort of try out and walk on if there were slots available. If you want to go to school to ride, I wouldn't recommend that, but it is sort of an option. If you happen to find yourself at a school and you're like, oh, actually, that looks like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
That usually is an option available. So again, if you're already at a school and you're like, that looks like a great time, and I'm friends with these girls, go and talk to the coach and see if that's an option. Because it was when I went to school.
We had a very strong emphasis on trainer-rider relationships. Obviously, you and I were as close as we could get, but certainly the trainers that you also rode with, and certainly I did, whether that was, Missy and John from North Run, or I was so close to Frank and Stacia Madden when I was riding with them. Did you have that same sense of coach-student relationship at school? And how much did that come into play even in the beginning? Did you meet the coaches before you got there? Was that a more of a little bit of a teacher-student relationship only? What did that go? How did that go?
I think that's going to be different for every school and honestly every rider that comes in. For me, coming in with the experience that I had, it was probably a little different than most of it. Was a little more, honestly, they kind of left me alone mostly. And I ended up, giving some flat lessons to, not as a freshman, but I think when I was a junior and senior, kind of giving some different lessons and setting up some exercises, some of the ones we've talked about here for my teammates. I was not a student coach but it's sort of ad hoc very occasionally. And I think in some ways the coaches that I came into were a little hesitant to try to coach me too much, for better or worse. I think these days it's probably a little different, and the programs are probably a little more like, the barns we're used to, of like, this is the training program and this is what, we do, and this is our style. And like I said, like, just like they have personalities, every training program is going to have a slightly different style and emphasis. So I don't think my experience is probably representative of what you would get now.
Mm-hmm. Do you find that I guess the better question is, what aspect of the program did you find most accepting or comforting while you were there? Was it the team aspect? Was it the fact that you still had, access to horses and could keep riding? I guess if you had some piece of something to look forward to from a student who is coming from, whether it's a very, high-end junior career or just, I've been riding through school, I've gotten to show my horse for a long time, now I have to go to school and ride strange horses. What can I look forward to in keeping that as a constant in my life?
Yeah, I think
or introducing something new, because we don't ride as teams as riders here.
Yeah, I think the combination, both of those things, right? The comfort of pulling into the barn, right? After you go to school, you have your classes, maybe you go in the morning or it's in the afternoon, and just that feeling of like pulling into the driveway of the barn, driving down, like getting out, sort of the smell, the sound,
the familiarity of that.
Familiarity of just like, okay, I'm at the barn.
I'm comfortable. Yeah.
Was, again, especially as a freshman, as you're sort of still adjusting, and college is, a very different environment. That was a really nice grounding experience to have. And for our weekly schedule, we would go out to the barn 3 times a week, as our class schedules allowed. So every semester we'd have sort of a class schedule, and then we'd sort of arrange, we'd put in a lesson group sort of based around that to fit in, to make everything work. And for most of it, you're only at the barn with a couple of other teammates. And so you kind of have a few that you'll go out with generally for a whole semester. And often you drive together. And so you sort of have this really small, group of 3 or 4 that you're kind of seeing, 3 times a week. And that's kind of fun. And then you have the larger team that you see on the weekends, or I think on Fridays, we'd have most of the team out at the barn. And so that was a great, again, kind of grounding familiarity experience of just being at a barn and with a couple of people getting to ride, kind of regardless of what you're doing, flatting or jumping or whatever.
Would you go every day to ride?
At South Carolina, we went 3 times during the week.
Okay.
So we would ride 3 times during the week, and then we would have workouts, typically in the early morning, 3 times as well. And
as a team that you did?
As a team, yeah. Okay. And so there was, I think, as generally college athletes' schedules go, it wasn't crazy, just in terms of the amount of hours, but it was certainly a lot, and it was mostly the scheduling around, because getting out to the barn and that's sort of a 3 to 4 hour chunk out of your day, and so it does take some scheduling to get around. But Yeah, for us, it was 3 days a week. Other schools may be different, especially if their barn is a little closer. At South Carolina, the barn we rode at, which I believe they're still at, is about half an hour from the school. So it is a little bit of
Okay.
a
So you had to
drive,
travel a
about
bit.
25 minutes. Yeah. So that was, I think, a consideration with the scheduling.
And when you were there, did you always go and did you have a lesson every time? Did you ride on your own? What was your barn day like?
Generally, there was a lesson. Generally, I think it was pretty rare that we just rode. Again, because we were only riding 3 times a week, one
Yeah,
horse,
you would have
that's
had to
not
do
a lot. And
right.
so in general, I believe one of the days would be a dressage lesson, one of the days would be a jumping lesson, and then Friday would sort of depend on whether we were having a competition that weekend or
What you
not.
needed.
And
Yeah.
yeah, then we would do different things. Sometimes we would do sort of mock formatted competitions to help, especially early in the year. So yeah, it would depend, but mostly lessons.
Last question. Are you glad you did this?
Yes. Short answer is yes, absolutely. For me, there were a couple of caveats, I think. One bit of advice is I think I got, like I've mentioned, my sort of recruiting and college application process was very ad hoc. I think I got very lucky. I had a wonderful time at the University of South Carolina, both because of the team, but also I do want to emphasize that you are still going to college at these schools. So your team life and that equestrian bubble that you is only a part of your college experience. And as I think as your freshman year, it might be a bigger part than it is as you move up as sort of a sophomore, junior, senior. So really I would recommend keeping that in mind as you go to visit these schools of it's not just I'm going to be on this team and that's going to be 100% of my life and social circle.
Yeah.
I'm going to be at this school. I'm going to be living in this city, wherever it happens to be. And so really taking a little bit more of a broader view of the school, the university, the city, etc. as you come in, whether you stay on the team for 4 years or not. I think the only, I would say, regret I had is I think I wish I had taken a break from the team. When I did it, that wasn't really possible. If you sort of you couldn't really leave and come back I get that for obvious reasons. I think for me, it would have made sense given that I was sort of pointed towards graduate school and very into school by the end of it. And I was going to conferences and I was applying to grad school, and that was much more my life. I think it would have been a better choice for me to not have done the team my senior year. In hindsight, I didn't regret it at the time, and I'm glad I did it. And it's not a strong regret, but I think in hindsight that would have made I was spread very, very thin trying to do.
You probably needed more time for other college related.
Yeah, and so I was, I was spread very thin, and I think there was things I missed out on and things I didn't have time to put the amount of effort in I would have liked, including the team. I think I was kind of phoning it in a little bit on the team because of that, because I was spread a little too thin. And so I think I should have made the decision senior year to say, hey, it's been great. We've had a great 3 years. There's plenty. You don't need me anymore, frankly, which was a fantastic feeling to have, right?
You weren't carrying the team.
You don't need me. This is great. And to really just focus on that. And I think that comes back to the importance of keeping that broader perspective in mind of the team is great, and absolutely see where you fit in and what team kind of resonates with your own personality and riding style, but also keep in mind the broader school and where you are, because
and I would imagine as you become a senior, you're now thinking of what's next, and that riding team isn't going to keep going unless, again, if you're doing school and going to return to the horse show world as a professional or as some version of, working with the business and the industry, that might be something that still is as important. You, at that point, it seems, had other goals of going to grad school and doing non-horse items. I think that's a struggle that everybody who does ride has to go through is time, really. How much time is riding taking up in my high school career? Am I missing out on social events? Am I missing out on academics? And finding that importance in your life can is always the question of how much time are we devoting to horses? It's true of the amateurs that I teach now. How much time do horses take up that might conflict with family events? And so life balance is something we all try to work on, right?
Life balance is hard in college, and it's harder on a team.
Sure. Yeah.
And I think some things come easier when you come into a team. You come in with this very, very defined cohort of people that you probably at least know some of them at some level, right? Generally, if you've shown there's people from all over the country, whether it's on your team or maybe even one of the other schools' teams. And so you come in with sort of this pre-made, handed to you cohort and family a little bit and schedule. And there's a lot of, and we didn't speak really to any of this, but I will just mention it. There are a lot of perks to being a student athlete, especially an Division I NCAA student athlete at a big school. You get a lot of support. You get a lot of help. I got
a lot of resources you can tap into.
You get a lot of resources. You get, whether it's free tutoring when you need it, or actually, just academic advisors and just support and help that you don't get as a.
Because you're representing the school now, so it's much more. I'm sure it's in their advantage to help you with your entire college career.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are definitely advantages even outside sort of that team aspect, but it is that trade-off of you can only spread yourself so thin, and there's so much, whether it's other clubs or things you might want to do at the university. Generally, my teammates and I weren't part of whether it's Greek life or whether it's other, theater club or whatever sort of intramural sports, right? If you're a big ultimate frisbee player, those generally are somewhere between discouraged and not allowed if you might get hurt, certainly during the season, to you just don't have time in the schedule. Sure. And so if you want your college experience to look a little more like that, of trying a bunch of new things, this might be a harder sell because it does take up a lot of time, and it is a little restrictive to your schedule, but it comes with, sort of a team and a lot of support, especially coming in. And it doesn't have to be either or. You can ride for a couple of years on the team and then, not the latter half of your college career. I don't think coaches are probably want to strangle me for even saying that, but you can, right? I think that's an option that people don't talk about. And it's kind of like, oh, if you're here for 4 years. And it's like, well, if that works for you, great. But I think it's worth reassessing every year in college and checking in of, is this still what I really want? Am I still going to bring 110% to the competition, to my team? Because they're also relying on me. Or are you going to, like I ended up doing senior year, kind of phoning in it a little bit, which, I think, again, was not the right choice for me, and probably not the right choice for the team that year. I think I still did well enough, but I certainly my focus was not there, and that probably wasn't fair to my teammates.
Sure. Yeah. And horses are such an all-in sport, whether you're taking care of one every single day, or like you said, you're committed to a team. And that's not just commitment to the horses, that's commitment to a group of people, to your school. And if you're signing up for it, that's got to be, top of your priorities. But if you're feeling torn between it, that can be a real challenge.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for all of that. I learned a lot about your experience there because, I went from seeing you every day as a rider as a kid to knowing what you were doing and hearing about it every couple of weeks, but not really knowing these details. So this was insightful for me, especially the figuring out your diagonals. I'm happy to know that you at least figured out your own system.
I love that I got away with it.
Fooled all of us. I don't know if Missy would be surprised as well to know that you looked to the inside shoulder for how to time when to post. We'll assume that just got thrown, over everyone's heads, and you nailed it. So congratulations.
Sorry, George Morris.
Sorry, George Morris. Sorry that we took another route. But honestly, that's the way you've always ridden, to have another route to get to this.
This works for me.
Whatever works for you, Kimmy. Let's do that.
But yeah, not general advice. Don't recommend.
Not general advice. Yes, don't do what Kimmy does. Please follow the general instruction and avoid that. Well, thanks, Kimmy. That was fun again.
Yeah, thank you.
I am going to add in, after our conversation, a nice fun dressage test for everyone listening at home. I'm not going to rely on you to tell me that because I fear you won't remember it very
That's
well.
correct.
The only dressage test I ever did as a junior was Capital Challenge used to have an equitation on the flat championship, which was not it is now a traditional flat class format with multiple riders, but it used to be a dressage test that we got weeks in advance to study and practice. And I actually do remember how long that took to learn. So I'm going to try to pull that up and see if I can talk my way through it again. But I think that was finished by the time you ended up at Capital Challenge.
I don't remember. Yeah, I don't remember doing dressage.
Clearly,
there.
that was not, we would have practiced it more. So that'll be coming up on the rest of this episode, and look forward to practicing that on your own. Thanks very much, Kimmy.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
And now a word from our Equine Network.
You can enjoy your favorite equine videos all in one place with Ride TV, the ultimate equine streaming platform. The newly relaunched Ride TV has all the series you love, like Rockstar Vets and Mini Horses, plus top-tier training videos and event footage from barrelracing.com and Horse and Rider on Demand. Whether you're ready to relax with your favorite series, binge watch competition footage, or train with a world champion, subscribe to Ride TV today for only $19.99 to see where your ride takes you. Visit ridetvgo.tv to subscribe.
All right, we are back on with a training exercise to try at home. This is a dressage test. It is not the dressage test that I had thought I had from 2002, the one I practiced at Capital Challenge, but that was really before iPhones. So before screenshots, before anything like that. That's not online at the moment, but what is online is a NCAA test pattern that we'll post on our social media website to make sure we can have a reference for you visually. But I'm going to talk through it, and it's pretty basic, but it's definitely working on some neat circles, as Kimmy referenced was necessary for preparing for school. Again, this is a typical test that you might see in a NCAA final, not final, sorry, but in competition on the flat. So we'll get started. To know this, it helps to have this visual in front of you while I'm talking about it, or at least have it in front of you before you get on and try it at home. But what happens is I'll try to explain where you enter the ring in reference to where our dressage letters are, since not all of us are familiar. Beginning with entering the ring at A, which is the center of the top of the ring. Enter at the working trot sitting until you arrive at X. X is the very center of the ring. When you get to the center of the ring, pick up your working canter on the left lead, canter straight down until the other end of the ring, which is now at C. So the end of the ring is the letter C in the center, and you're going to turn left. Keep tracking left until you get back to the center of the side of the ring, which is now at E, and circle left for a 20-meter circle. This visual that you'll have here has the exact measurements. So a typical dressage arena is 20 meters by 60 meters. And going from one side to the other side is the 20-meter diameter. So keeping that circle on the left lead, you'll lengthen the canter on that circle. I would recommend doing that circle once first at the working canter to get a feel of where that space is, and then try it at the lengthening of stride. Once you get back to E, so you'll have done 2 circles, get back to the side of the ring, you're going to continue cantering on the left lead at the working canter. Now you're cantering up to the end of the ring, back towards the ingate, which is A. Pass A, get to the corner and go diagonally across the ring. You're going from F to H. And you are changing your direction with a simple change of lead through the trot at X. So that's the center line. So basically, to recap the first 3, there are 9 movements here. The first 3 movements are enter the ring at the sitting trot. When you get to the center of the ring, pick up the left lead canter. Keep cantering straight until you get to the end of the ring, then turn up the left long side. When you get to the center of the ring, make a 20-meter circle, which is side to side. The directions say to do it at the lengthening the lengthening of stride at the canter, I'm recommending adding a first working canter circle. Then you're back on E, back on the long side, continuing straight, cantering past the in-gate, which is A, then across the diagonal from left to right, making a simple change through the trot at X. And now you're back cantering on the right lead at the end of the ring, opposite of the in-gate, cantering past what's called C down there, and making a right turn up the right side of the long side of the ring. And you're going to keep cantering until you get to B, which is the center of the long side, and make a 15-meter circle at a collected canter. Again, this is easier to see on this visual that we'll post exactly how big that circle is, but it's not all the way over. Obviously, if the ring is 20 meters wide, you're going 15 meters in diameter. Collected canter at B, which is the center of the long side on the right lead. When you get past, and again, try a circle first if you need to, but the collected canter is obviously easier to control than the working canter or the lengthening of stride. So this circle on the right lead is at the collected canter. Back to the side of the ring, keep cantering down the long side until you get to F, which is at the bottom at the bottom of the ring here in the corner. Come down to the working trot sitting, keep turning right. Go past K, which is in the first corner, tracking right, back to E, which is in the center of the long side, and turn right at E. So now you're turning away from perpendicular from the long side of the arena or the dressage ring and making a 10-meter circle on the right, to the right. Again, try this visual. This is a little harder to explain than it is to see, but you're doing a trotting circle at 10 meters of diameter at the sitting trot. And it's right at the center of the ring. Once you've completed the sitting trot circle at 10 meters to the right at X, center of the ring, you're going to then make a left circle for 10 meters at the sitting trot. So that's a figure 8, but you're doing one circle to the right, one circle to the left. You'll be then coming out of that second circle facing the long side of the ring, which is B, and you're going to make a left turn. Keep on the sitting trot, tracking left all the way down to M, turning left at the end of the ring back to C. Once you've passed C, you're going to come across the diagonal of the ring. Now, B to F. It's the same diagonal that you had at the change of lead earlier, except you're going in the opposite direction. Now you're coming back up towards F, which is the end of the ring near the in-gate, and you are doing the lengthening of stride at the trot. Once you get up to F, you can come back to, which is the top of the diagonal, you can come back to the working trot sitting. These instructions are to drop your stirrups. Then you're now dropping your stirrups at A, which is the in-gate that you've started with. You'll be doing a serpentine through the center of the ring, 3 loops. So you're going from A to K, which is now on the left side of the ring, making the ring into thirds at the sitting trot. This is without your stirrups. You'll be looping past B, which is on the right side of the ring, heading over towards the left side, passing H, and then still at the sitting trot, passing C, which is at the very end of the ring. As you approach the corner of the end of the ring, you can go back to picking up the canter, but now you're on the counter lead, picking up the left lead. So you're tracking right, but you're picking up the left lead. Continue all the way down that long side until you get back to F, which is just counter-cantering on the straightaway till you get to the corner. Back to the sitting trot. Back to the working walk. And then between F and A, you are to pick up your stirrups and exit the ring at the working walk. So that's the description on the diagram. I'm going to read through it one more time, but talk about it in terms that I would give as if giving a lesson. So you're entering the ring in the center of the in-gate, heading down the center line at the working trot sitting. Once you get to the very center of the ring, you're going to pick up the left lead, continue all the way straight to the end of the ring. Make a left turn, Continue cantering up the long side. When you get to the center of the ring, you're going to make a circle from side to side, 20 meters in diameter, and lengthen the canter. When you get back to the edge of the ring, back to the long side, come back to the working canter. Continue cantering all the way along past the in gate, up into the corner, and head across the diagonal from right to left, using a simple change of lead through the trot in the center of the ring. Once you're on the right lead, continue all the way down the diagonal to the end of the ring, go around the short end of the ring and back up the long side on the right side. You're on the right lead now. When you get to the center of that long side, you're making a collected canter at 15 miles an hour. I'm sorry, at 50 miles an hour. There I go with my mile per hours. 15-meter circle. 15 miles an hour would be pretty fast for that. So let's go to collected canter, 15-meter circle right at the center of the ring, next to the long side of the ring. Back to the working canter down the long side. When you get to the end of this side of the ring, you're going to come down to the sitting trot. Keep doing the sitting trot past the in gate, down the long side of the ring again. When you get to the center, make a right turn, and you're going to do a figure eight in the center of the ring at 10-meter circles. So circle to the right first, then you're back in the very center of the ring, circle left, back to the center of the ring, continue straight till you get to the opposite side of the ring and make a left turn. Sitting trot all the way down the long side of the ring. Again, back to keep turning left. When you get to the end of the ring, you're going to do a sitting trot until you get to the corner and go back on the diagonal, which is a lengthening of stride at the rising trot. So that's back on that diagonal line, heading back up towards the end of the ring. That's towards the in-gate area. When you get up to the corner, come back to the working trot rising and drop your stirrups. And I missed this earlier. That serpentine that you'll be doing is without stirrups at the working trot rising, not the sitting trot. So when you get back up to the in-gate, you're passing the in-gate, you're at the working trot rising, and you're dropping your stirrups. Then you have your serpentine. Divide the ring into three parts, into thirds. 3-loop serpentine that puts you back at the end of the ring, tracking right. When you get to the long side of the ring, pick up your counter canter. You still don't have stirrups, cantering on the left lead down the long side. When you get to the corner, come down to the working walk, pick up your stirrups, and exit the ring at the working walk. That sounded more complicated than the diagram looks like. Try to have that in front of you if you would like to do this exercise and just look through it. Once you do it, it looks like a really fun exercise to do. So take a peek. And if you have any college students that are thinking about trying to get into school for their riding team, this might be a fun exercise to do and video, like Kimmy said, and send in first year applications. Thanks for joining us today on this episode of the Show Jumping Podcast. Make sure to join our Facebook group, Overheard on the Show Jumping Podcast, and submit your questions there. And remember to keep your eyes up and your heels down.